What's worse than filing taxes and having to pay the government money? Even getting a refund is not the greatest thing because that means you've overpaid throughout the year and you're just getting your own money back. But you know what's worse than that is when you go to file your taxes and somebody's already done it for you and has taken a refund from you. Basically, when you've been defrauded, when someone has stolen your identity, gone online, filled out a tax return in your name, received the funds from your tax refund, and you didn't know about it. Welcome to the show, Tony. We're talking tax fraud, which you know nothing about. But do you know
I
of
don't.
anyone that had their identity stolen?
You know what? I've known not directly, like not anybody close to me, but I've worked with people or known someone that said, man, I got my identity stolen and they hacked some accounts. But I have never personally run across anyone that has had somebody file a tax return in their name. I've never really been familiar with this scam. I didn't know that was a thing. That's scary.
It's a big thing. It's actually quite big in Florida. A lot of Floridians have this. I've had clients that have had this
Really?
happen to them. And in the financial services industry, there's been a lot of data breaches last year in
Yeah,
2023.
true.
So we can expect more of this to crop up. All right. So what I want to do is explain a little bit more about what this is and then go through the tool that is now available to everyone to help prevent it. So this is coming from the National Taxpayer Advocate Annual Report to Congress from 2023. So anyone that's watching on YouTube can go to that link and read it if you want something to help you fall asleep. But what it does is explains the state of the IRS and the tax returns and that sort of thing. So here's some stats directly from this report. Individuals who are victims of tax related identity theft are waiting an average of nearly 19 months for the IRS to process their returns and send their refunds. So imagine, Tony, your identity is stolen. Someone files taxes in your name. They get a refund. You go to file to get your refund. And you know that the refund they're putting in is a lot higher than the one you probably deserve. And now it's going to take you a year and a half, more than a year and a half, to get this resolved. We talk in this country how a lot of people can't afford a $1,000 bill, a surprise bill. Well, what about expecting a tax refund and not getting it for a year and a half?
Ouch.
The interesting part is, and this is from 2022, the IRS suspended processing 4.8 million tax returns. 4.8 million people were suspended because of potential fraud. And most of those were for people with adjusted gross income of less than 250% of the poverty level. So we're not talking about people that are super rich that are getting their identities. This is the average person that is getting their tax payments held up, suspended because of potential fraud, and they're waiting to authenticate their account. And while you're waiting, what are you going to do? There's nothing you could do. Now you're getting interest. You're getting interest on that. This is a fun little fact that, no one wants this to happen. The IRS doesn't want it to happen because they had to pay out 1.4 billion in additional interest last year
Wow.
because of the amended returns. Because say you make an error, or the IRS makes an error in your favor, and you're trying to figure it out, redo, make an amendment, and they're supposed to have given you an extra $1,000, say. A year and a half later, they're not going to just give you the $1,000. They're going to give you the 1,000 plus interest on the $1,000 that they should have given to you a year and a half ago. So they're not happy about it because they want it fixed. You're not happy about it because your identity was stolen, and it's a big problem.
Wow.
And you said you haven't heard of it, but it's
Nope.
big because look at this. The IRS closed an inventory last year with 484,000 cases still in the Identity Theft Victims Assistance Program. So
Wow.
500,000 people are still in the inventory, like trying to backlog through this. Think about all the people they're processing on top of this.
Wow. That's a real problem.
Right. So there's a new solution though. That's the good news. And the
Don't live
problem
in
is with this
Florida? Do we have to move out of Florida or?
Just because the fraudsters say they're from Florida doesn't mean they are. They could be working in a sweatshop in
Sure.
Minnesota. Well,
Sure.
probably not because it's cold up there, so you're
Yeah.
not swimming. Um, so you don't know you're a victim until it's too late. It's usually, they. So what happens is you'll get a letter from the IRS saying, "Hey, you requested this info," and you're like, "I didn't request anything," or "Hey, here's a notice that we think you may. This doesn't seem right," and you're that's the letter you don't want to get. When the IRS sends you a letter saying, "Hey, is this you?" Then you know you get a problem. And so
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than wait for that letter, you want to be proactive.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you heard of this tax identity program, Tony? It's called the Tax Identity Theft Identity Protection Personal Identification Number, IP PIN. Have you heard of this?
Nope. Never heard of it.
No one
Should
has.
I have?
Well,
Okay,
I
good.
take that back.
I don't feel
I
as
take that
bad.
back. If you were a victim of fraud in the past, and I know people that have gone through this, the IRS gives you a special PIN so that in the future, when you file your taxes, you just file your taxes, and then there's a separate spot to put your PIN number. And if there's discrepancy, then then it doesn't get processed. So the fraudsters are filing as Tony, and then it says, "What's your PIN?" and they don't know it because
Right.
that's an extra layer, right? And that resets every year. They give you a new PIN so that you're not just going to keep getting your identity stolen over and over again.
Right. Right.
And so that PIN was given to people that were victims. But what the IRS has done now is they allow you to get your PIN in advance. So you don't have to be a victim. You can go online now and use it to confirm your identity on your tax return.
Ah, okay. So you
So
can be
this,
proactive and get the PIN, and that way, if
Mhm.
somebody steals your identity in the future, they won't have the PIN number.
Right. And so it's an extra layer of security that was always afforded to people that were victims, but is now, as of 2024, being made available to all people who file taxes in the United States. And you could use it for your current year, or if you need to redo last year, you can use the PIN. And then every year the PIN resets. So you don't have, the problem is now the burden's on you to remember your PIN, because if you submit a tax return and you don't have your PIN number when you've created one, then it's going to get rejected. So that's the price you pay.
Sure.
But it seems reasonable to me to do this. So I'm recommending, if you're listening, you're still watching, go get a PIN. Go do it. Maybe Tony and I, after the show, will go do it. We'll do
Yeah.
it together. The website below, for those that are watching on YouTube, the IRS.gov is the home site for it, and you can go and get a PIN.
Yeah.
The
IRS.gov. And then you go to identity theft, fraud, scams. If you type that in the search, it'll bring you to the PIN page.
Right. You basically want to get an identity protection PIN, personal identification number, from the IRS, and then boom, that helps. Now, it's not going to prevent fraud, right? It's not going to, because someone can get that too somehow, but it's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to save a lot of people a lot of headaches.
Yes. Yeah.
It's going
If
to
you're
add more
really
headaches to the
careful
IRS.
about it, if you're careful about where you keep that PIN number and you're careful about who you give it to, which should be pretty much no one, you and your spouse and maybe
You
your
can give it to
tax
your accountant,
preparer. Yeah.
right? Now, if you and your spouse have one, or I get one, and then I file jointly, so let's say I do that. Let's say my
Okay.
spouse got the tax return. I
Yep.
work with my accountant. I do all the taxes. I file it, and it gets rejected. My accountant says, "Dan, why did it get rejected? What's your PIN?" I'm like, "I don't have a PIN." But my wife does. She didn't tell me. So you got to communicate with your spouse if you're filing, and you have a PIN on it, because they'll want everyone's PIN number.
Sure.
But I think it's great. I think it should help a lot. It's a little bit of a
that's
burden
huge.
on you now, but it's
Sure.
also a burden on the IRS to keep track of PINs and have this new system. But it's so much better than having to go through and fight fraud and get refund for a mistake.
Yeah, that sounds
You
like
know,
a nightmare.
18, yeah, 19
19
months
months. Yeah. Of
on
without your
average.
money.
Right.
Could be long.
I had a
Knowing the
client.
government, it could be longer, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. I had a client that went over 2 years on something. It wasn't a fraud case. It was a mistake on some form. And they were expecting to get a big chunk back from the IRS. 2 years later, they finally got it, and they got interest on it. And the interest rate was pretty good now. So the IRS uses the federal rates. So they're like, yeah, we got to get our act together. It's no longer 1% interest. It's like
Yeah.
5 or something like that.
Right.
So it's significant. I urge people to go and check it out. Tony, you going to do it? Are you going to go?
I'm going to do it.
You know, the best way to prevent fraud from someone doing your tax returns, and this has always been my recommended course of action to prevent this before this came out. I think this is pretty good, but I still think this is a better way. Just beat them to it. Beat the scammers to it. File your tax return before them so that when they go to file it, they get blocked. Wait, no, it's already been filed. You can't do it again.
Yeah, there you go.
Which means
that's the obvious fix, right?
Well, yeah, you just go and file. A lot of people wait to the last minute. I always do last minute. I file extensions because I have so many things, just different things going on. Plus, I usually owe money, so there's no rush for me. I pay it at the deadline. But for the average person out there with a simple tax return, just do it. And you might say, "Oh, I'm waiting on statements from this bank or this company." Well, you know what you could do? You could call up your advisor. So when I get clients calling me, hey, where's my 1099 from 1099-R from my retirement account, my IRA? Oh, they're in the mail. No, they're not. They're taking forever. I'll go online and get it for them. They'll come in the office and we'll go, let's log in, let's get it right then and there. A lot of people are getting better at that, being able to proactively get their statements rather than wait for the mail. But a lot of times you're waiting in the mail, and then you get them, and then everyone gets them at the same time, and then everyone gives them to the accountant at the same time, and then the accountant's like, I gotta do. Just be the first guy. Be that guy that shows up to the accountant's office with everything day one and file. That's my recommendation there.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I think this is a great topic, and that's another great. So 2 great solutions to this problem.
Well, I don't know about filing taxes is a great solution. It's not a fun one. No one likes it. I don't know many people that like to file taxes.
Solves the problem, though.
But as a certified financial planner, I deal with taxes all the time. I don't prepare taxes, but I'm sitting across the table with my clients saying, let's look through. Let's go through your taxes and let's see. Looks like you entered this wrong. And I talk with the CPAs. So it doesn't have to be a painful process. It could be a planning process. You can learn from your taxes. Hey, look, we paid this much in. Why is our tax rate so high? Why did we jump to the next tax bracket on Social Security? How is Social Security taxed? These are the conversations you should be having. But the last thing you need when you're dealing with all this is to have fraud. So go get an IP PIN. Get it done if you haven't done it already. File your taxes, get an IP PIN, call it a day. Just get into the habit of getting an IP PIN every time. And we'll see how this goes. This is the first year with it for people that haven't been in part of fraud. Let's see if it cuts it down. I'm thinking it will. And maybe we'll revisit this in a year and say, when the stats come out and say, did tax fraud go down? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
As always, Tony, best to be prepared. Be proactive rather than reactive.
And work with a financial services professional like yourself. Like you said, you help people find the right forms so they can get filed on time or ahead of time. But a great problem to point out to people, because some people might be unaware this is possible. Sounds like it's happening more and more. So I'm glad we covered this. That's a great one, Dan. I was unaware.
And if you're still listening, make sure you subscribe, but talk to your accountant, talk to your tax preparer and say, hey, are you aware of this? And have them shout it out. I mean, we need to start working together to solve these problems. It's us against them. The fraudsters are out there. Get rid of them. So work together. Tony, what are you going to do right now? Where are you going next?
IRS.gov to set up my PIN.
IP PIN. Thanks for a good show. We'll catch everyone next week.
All matters discussed in today's show are for informational purposes only.
This show is not investment advice.
Dan Whittle nor Dolphin Financial Group are affiliated or endorsed by any government agency.
Investment advisory services are offered through Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc., a registered investment advisor in the state of Florida.
Insurance products and services are offered through Dolphin Insurance, Inc.
Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc. and Dolphin Insurance, Inc. are affiliated companies doing businesses as Dolphin Financial Group.
You should talk to someone at Dolphin Financial Group before implementing any of these strategies or ideas.